You're listening to WCOM LP 103.5 FM Carborough and Chapel Hill. It's a Tuesday, it's 5 o'clock, and that only means one thing. It's time for another round of Snarky Faith with your host, Stuart Deloney. This is a space where we irreverently wrestle through life, culture, and spirituality, all with our heads in the clouds, our tongues in our cheeks, our hearts in our sleeves, and our feet on the ground. At Snarky Faith, the questions or even the answers are never the point. It's all about the conversation. So here's your host, Stuart Deloney.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to another round of Snarky Faith Radio. And what we'll be doing over the next few weeks is giving you guys a rundown of some of the best of 2016. So here is your Snarky Faith Rewind.
Or should I call you Saint Ben?
We're all saints.
That's true, I guess, in a certain sense. But actually, bringing that up, that was a really lame transition to what we're going to be talking about today. We wanted to talk about kind of the whole...
Man, that took a while.
I know.
That was a very delayed sound effect.
It was. It was a sad. It was a sad sound effect. No, but we wanted to really be talking through this whole thing because I think this is something that it confuses a lot of folks, especially for us that have not grown up in the Catholic tradition, is the whole thing behind sainthood. Mm-hmm. Because it recently came out that Pope Francis is going to push forward and we talked about this earlier. So I didn't know if I was using this word wrong, but the canonizing of Mother Teresa. And so explain what canonizing means, Ben.
Like canonization?
Yeah, canonization.
I think it's, I am not a Catholic. I really like the Catholic Church, a lot of things about it. So I'm just not an expert. But I think it's sort of a sign that something or someone is commonly accepted as something that points to God or someone that points to God.
So you're on the ends because that's when I'm using this term, but I also know that we like to use this, especially in Protestant circles, for when we canonize Scripture, figured out what Scripture was canon or biblical and what Scripture was not, and we look at that.
Isn't that interesting? I think that's a really interesting point. That in Protestant circles it tends to be textual, but that it's extended to people in the Catholic Church. That's a very interesting thing.
Well, and if you think about it, like even in how you were defining canon, what is or what isn't canon. I guess I'll use that. I keep using.
We need a canon sound effect.
Yeah. But with that, what it seems to me, at least in Catholic circles, and if we have any Catholic listeners out in there, please give us feedback on this because in certain bits of today we will probably be edging our toes in places that we are out of our depth.
Yep.
But what feels weird coming at it from more of an evangelical or a Protestant background is the fact of I'm fine with the idea of Scripture that's canonized, like these books are set apart because again, like you'd said, Ben, it's textual. But when we begin to look at people, does that mean like you are like a super Christian or you were a super beloved by God for you to become a saint?
Well, maybe to give kind of a charitable intro to all this, at least how I understand. I think first the best way to maybe convince someone that this is worth thinking about or potentially accepting. I'm not trying to convince people, but just to give maybe a rationale that people who believe in afterlife or resurrection, that we think that either people are, their soul or their body or something is somewhere after they die. We believe that there is this realm of life that we can't see right now. And so I think saints are kind of signs of this like otherworldliness that's still here. So, people say like praying to saints, which in the Protestant church, that people will say, well, the Catholics pray to saints. That's not necessarily true. It's more of a praying through. Kind of certain people represent certain ideals that we should live in our lives, and that we can kind of call on. I think it's in Hebrews where it says that we're sort of surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. You can think of witness also as like a sign or a cloud of people that are like cheering us on, that certain people have lived their lives in such a way that we should really mimic them because they were mimicking Christ in a specific way, and that they're kind of they're still alive somewhere, not necessarily like right in front of us bodily the same way we are, and that they embodied a certain idea or a certain way of life that we need to aspire to. And that's the way I understand it, but that could be off in some way.
Well, and I remember, this is a few years back, but I was, because we all do this, like I was hanging out with an Orthodox priest, because who doesn't do that regularly? But I was hanging out with him, and I was asking him, because he was kind of giving me like a tour of, I don't even know, I mean, of their church. And so walking through there's huge icons everywhere, like large paintings and pictures of saints everywhere. Like in a sense, like it was almost like for me, it felt sensory overload, but I didn't come from that background, so I wasn't completely understanding it. So I began to ask him. I was like, well, hey, what is the deal with all of that? And again, I was raised like conservative Southern Baptist, so the idea of praying to Mary or to a saint was seen almost as idolatry, which because the Baptists like to find any reason to say that the Catholics are going to hell, or really almost anybody. I mean, that's kind of like a normal Sunday. But as this priest had explained to me, and was simply that, he said, when you begin to look at your own family, like you end up having a great-grandfather, and they're people that we look back upon, and we try to say, kind of like how you were explaining this, Ben, like, oh, like your great-great-grandfather did this, and he was a good man, and he was this, and so we tend to idolize these people, right? And because for us, if that's my great-great-grandfather, well, there's, genetically, there's bits of me and of him and me kind of a situation. And so we begin to have like a family lineage. And when you begin to talk about like a spiritual family, it ends up being like the saints are kind of part of like your family of faith.
Yeah.
They're kind of part of your family. And so these are just those that, I liked how you explained it, that they are still kind of there watching us and kind of cheering us on to some degree. And that, that there's still an active role in this. And I think some of that tradition, like the Orthodox tradition, some of the Catholic tradition is that it isn't simply like that and again, I'm stepping a bit out of my depth here, but that yes, there is an afterlife, but there's still some sort of a connection between the afterlife and what's going on now today.
Yeah, right.
That it's not like one or the other. Because I think, again, in Protestant circles, it's kind of like, well, we will see them later, like way later type of a situation, and almost as if that they're two completely different realms. But I think in some of these more Orthodox traditions, you end up having it to where it's not, like they're not that far away from us kind of a situation.
Yeah.
Like they're watching down upon us, that kind of idea. And so with that, I mean, we're talking through Mother Teresa, for those who don't know, was, a Catholic nun who worked with the poor in Calcutta, India. And really, Pope Francis has come forward saying that they are going to make her a saint on September the 4th. And so some of this is new to me. So that's kind of why I wanted to talk through some of this, because a lot of people know Mother Teresa for how she worked with the orphans and the poor in Calcutta, which again, when we think of poor, which is another interesting conversation I got in with people, and I don't want to get too far off of this, but perspective plays a huge issue in how we view poor. Like we're in America, and the American poor would be different than the Calcutta poor. If that makes sense. And I'm not saying like one's better than the other, but oftentimes when we talk about, this is a person that went and decided to dedicate their lives to living like in this dirt, like abject poverty area, it's different than the way we view it here. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like that there's a huge sacrifice involved in going and planting yourself in a place that is well below any kind of standards of what we in America would declare as poor. And I'm not saying that that's why she's a saint. I'm not trying to elevate that, but I think sometimes perspective on what actually is poor ends up being something that gets lost on us.
I want to hear you try to pronounce her name. I don't want to say like her given name, I guess. I don't know what.
Yeah, because she was
Mother Teresa. Her first name is not Mother, and her
given name is not Teresa.
Born,
yeah. So she had Albanian parents and grew up in the Macedonian capital, which again, you're making fun of me because you know that I cannot pronounce things, period. And this,
I couldn't either.
I mean, when I begin to look at her, like her birth name, it makes me feel like I'm dyslexic. Like I'm just like, I don't understand how these vowels and consonants go together. And so I have no idea how I'd even begin to pronounce that.
Okay.
And I think that if I did try to pronounce it, someone would have a recording of me doing that, and that would actually keep me from probably one day being a saint.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, because I'm on the list.
Butcher her name.
I'm on the list. I'm working my way up. I'm working down what I need to do in order to do that. So beginning to talk about that, then, I wanted to kind of walk through here, a bit of what does it take to be a saint, like within the Catholic Church. And then we're going to give our own kind of snarky faith spin on this whole thing. Because, Ben, come on. I think that, part of the miracle that we've given to the world is this radio show.
Well, and I think we've really held back some of the snark. It's been more, it's been too serious.
Darn genuine.
It's been too serious. It's been too weighty lately.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so okay.
Let's lighten the mood, man.
Okay. Well, so we'll go through this and then we will go full tilt snark on this. So step one, if you want to become a saint out there. So first of all, you have to wait certain time period. They're saying about at least 5 years after you've died, which
that'll be really easy for me
to wait 5 years after you've died.
Yes.
Okay.
I've got that in tow.
Okay.
I can wait 5 years after I'm dead.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like, why can't we be like saints today?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, we need to relax this a little bit. But I'm actually just being sarcastic when I say that. No. And so this is, and we're actually running. Yeah, thank you. We're running down a list, and this is actually we're taking this from the BBC, and so they'd said, yes, step one, wait for 5 years, and so the process to make someone a saint cannot normally start until at least 5 years after their death. So, this is, but what's interesting about that is I think that also lends itself to some sort of a realm of humility.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like if we were handing out like sainthood, like while people were still alive, I think it may go to their heads, and then. If it went to their heads, they probably shouldn't be a saint anymore.
I know that does. I was going to say, I wonder if people aspire to be saints.
Yeah.
And if that would mess you up from being a saint.
And so they're saying at least 5 years here. And so they have here in this article, this is awesome. And they say that some have waited a long time before they can reach Catholic sainthood. Saint Bede, I don't know. It's B-E-D.
Bede.
Bede.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Bede. See, I can't even pronounce simple things.
I think.
Let's just go with it. So Saint Bede, the theologian, he died in 735, but he had to wait 1,164 years before he was declared a saint. Gosh. That's quite a wait.
I'll bet he was upset having to wait
he
that
was
long.
Ticked. I really do think that. And I think he probably could have a lot to have said about that. But oftentimes, too, again, footnote here is a pope can set aside the waiting for that whole 5-year waiting period. He can kind of move it up.
Instant canonization? Insta-canon?
Well, I don't know if you can insta-canon. I don't think it's simply like he just throws some water on you. And he's just like, you're a saint.
You do have to be dead. I think that's a huge qualifier. Right?
Yes. Yeah, you do have to be
You can't be
dead.
a living saint.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, it would go to your head, and then you'd think you were awesome, and then you wouldn't have to. Then you would be a saint, or isn't one of the Kardashians' kids or named Saint something?
Really?
I don't know.
I honestly, and I'm not saying this.
Not Kardashians' kids. I'm talking about Kanye. The Kanye Kardashian.
I'm not trying to be a cool hipster person that acts like they don't care about popular culture, but I really am very removed from that kind of stuff.
Well, that's what we call like just wasted brain space. So you're doing well.
Unfortunately,
you're doing well. You've learned to tune out the noise of things that don't matter.
I'll try to pick up a magazine. Usually we're talking when we're in the line at the store, so I'll try to pick up a magazine or two.
You do that
so I can catch up.
Do that. The tabloids speak the truth.
I know one of their kids' names is Norris.
Is Northwest? Yeah,
right? Yeah, very clever. That's just brilliant.
Sarcasm.
Thank you.
Not quick enough on the sarcasm.
No. But yeah, that is. It was quite genius. So okay. So step one, you got to be dead. So for all of you out there listening, you're going to have to wait a little bit. And we're not calling for mass suicides here because you got to get step two. So it's not simply just you have to be dead.
You can't just die
to do it. To where we're going
a lot of
yeah, we're not going around just canonizing dead people. No. So step two is you have to become a quote servant of God. So you've died, 5 years have passed, or you may have like a waiver. And what then begins to happen is the church will begin to open up an investigation into the life of this individual to see whether their lives have had sufficient holiness and virtue to be considered a saint. I would love to hear the definition of what is
Sufficiently holy
and virtue. Because what is that like? Are you have to be like 75% holy? Like, what is sufficient in that?
Well, that's one of the, if I'm going to have, I guess, any critiques of the Catholic Church, I feel like sometimes things get explained a little too much. I feel like you want to have some kind of something to grab onto when you're making decisions and things like that. I get sort of the heart of this step or of this category, because you don't want to just turn a blind eye and say, this person was great, they lived a great life, because they might not have. They might have had some really crappy things go on and that they covered up, and you want to thoroughly investigate if this is a person we're going to put forward and say, hey, this person lived a great life and you should be like them. Mm-hmm. But then, in their neighborhood and in their circles, they were stepping on people or, doing things that they shouldn't have, then obviously you don't want to purport them to be a model for your community. So I get that. But yeah, saying, investigating sufficient holiness, I think goes a little too far. Maybe you could have just said, like, see if they lived a good life. I don't know.
Well, no, but that's funny. I mean, how you listen, so this person may have devoted their lives towards, let's say, feeding orphaned leper children, right? But, they don't wash their hands after they use the bathroom, or they openly burp at the table. You have to weigh these things out.
That's true.
You know what I'm saying? You're God to those people, but man, your manners at home are not that great.
I just point out, too, I just realized this is the BBC's wording, so...
That's true.
The Catholic Church might not have used the phrase sufficient holiness.
No, it's whatever it would be in Latin.
I'm not even going to try.
I don't even know that.
I think, and virtue is also a word used, and I think that's really important. We could even maybe talk about virtue on one of our shows one day.
Ooh, that's true.
I really like the concept of virtue.
I think yes. So talking about virtuous people that would not be either of us.
Probably not.
That's true. Okay.
If I'm the most virtuous person.
But I'll edit that part out because, again, I don't want this to be any kind of a speed bump in my road to sainthood.
Yeah, you don't want to admit that.
So note to self, edit this out later.
And you want to pay off everyone around you so that they also don't call you viceful and virtuous.
I hate being viceful.
That's not a word.
No. Or is viceful? Is that just like? Is that like one of
vicious?
Is that like a follower of Don Johnson? Like you're like very viceful.
Only in Miami.
Only Miami, and while you're wearing neon socks.
Yeah.
No, but it's kind of like that's the funny thing when you begin to look at this. Like nowadays, we give awards to people. So let's talk about like entertainment awards, right? So the Oscars, they'll give like a lifetime achievement award like every year, and usually the person's alive.
I was going to ask if they were dead. Does
Not
Morgan
always.
Freeman have one?
I don't know. I mean, I think just simply his voice should be, because he's one of those guys.
Just his voice.
That he's been in like some good movies, but he's also been in a ton of crappy movies.
That's true. Yeah, he makes some spurious choices.
Yes, because again, if we're talking about that, I don't know if he would have sufficient holiness in his choice in movie roles. No, but what I'm saying is like when we talk about like a Lifetime Achievement Award, it's kind of sad for somebody to get that. I mean, I've always people like, oh, it's so nice to be honored for my work. But like ultimately, you're not dead, there's some genius here to the sainthood thing. You know what I'm saying? Like if you gave them it too early, it's kind of like, well, we're done with you. Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Good.
Like usually like that, like the stars that get it, they've already peaked. And they're well down the hill after all of that happened.
I'm going to hang them up.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? I mean, one day you're Mel Gibson, like winning Best Director for a movie, and the next day, after you've kind of climbed, you've hit the peak, and then you've come down, and then you're getting pulled over for anti-Semitic remarks. Or actually, you're getting pulled over for being drunk, and then you run into the anti-Semitic remarks. It's a sad thing. Almost a saint, almost a Lifetime Achievement Award. So close, but so far. So Catholics, you are onto something. People need to be dead. for this to happen. No, but when we're talking about
People need to be dead. Wait, let me finish. To be canonized.
to be canonized. That's true. That's true. We could get too far off into some other issues with just declaring who needs to be alive and who needs to be dead. But that's really what we're doing in our political circus that's going on right now. No, but so step 2 was becoming a servant of God. We talked about sufficient holiness and virtue, and so really what they do is the church goes and gathers information about the person's like life and deeds, and getting like witnesses' testimonies. Which wouldn't that be a little hard for what did we say his name was, like Saint Bede, or what did you say? Saint Bede. How are you going to get witness testimonies? I mean, I guess you're assuming if somebody wrote it down.
Books. Yeah, I mean, it would have to be.
Okay, so if we're going to do this,
relying on books.
Note to self. Okay, so our best chances of being saints may be more than 5 years after we've died.
Well, and in the Catholic and Orthodox traditions, you have a lot more of they call it like apostolic succession, and the sort of like passing on of people's lives and things like that. I know in our modern world, especially even when we were talking about like investigation into the life of the individual and that sort of stuff, I know that there are questions probably popping up of there was no investigation of people's lives, and recently with all the things going on in the Catholic Church, and I'm sure there's a lot of question to this, but at the very least, people are trying to, I don't know, I want to be charitable with things.
Or you can look at it that this sainthood thing was so important that all their investigators were out busy investigating sainthood instead of the issues
what they should have done.
Of altar boyhood.
But things are going in the right direction, so I want to keep it positive.
We'll keep it positive. Okay.
We like Pope Francis.
Okay. Oh, we do. This is okay. So so life and deeds. So what I was actually trying to get at was we need to make. How about this? You can write books about my great deeds, and I'll write books about your great deeds, and hopefully that can be witness testimonies.
You can write a pamphlet about mine.
Okay, a pamphlet.
And I'll write an encyclopedia about yours.
Okay, it'll be a very short encyclopedia, and yours will be a very long pamphlet. More like a scroll.
Scroll.
Which actually seems like that would be more ancient and holy anyways.
Yeah, you should write it in hieroglyphics.
It'll be like off those old printers. Do you remember the ones that like had like you had to like peel off the sides of the paper?
Oh, yeah, dot matrix.
Yeah, those were the good times. So your scroll will be printed on from a dot matrix printer.
Yeah,
and then
you could just make like a picture of me in ASCII, right? That like word art, and then print it off on dot matrix printer.
Okay,
what are we talking about?
I don't even know. We're well. So the whole thing behind this is us trying to figure out if there's a hope for us to be canonized in this, as we're somehow trying to explain to everybody else what actually it takes. Okay, so we have the church goes. You asked for more snark, and we've kind of gone there, maybe too far. I've gone too far.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm being very critical today.
No. We're fine.
I don't mean to criticize you.
Okay, no, it's okay.
Maybe it'll fluff up your resume though.
Yeah, but just please.
I'm persecuting you.
That's very true. It's one of my miracles. I had to put up with Ben. We'll get to miracles in a minute too. So there's an investigation that goes on. So if they find sufficient evidence, then they can make a recommendation to the Pope. So this is done more in the lower levels at first, right? The bishops and I don't know, cardinals or other people of stature. Because again, we're letting the fact that we really don't know what we're talking about pretty gleaming, which also seems very virtuous of us in order to do that too. Okay, so then it gets yes. So it gets to the Pope, and then the Pope's the one that can say, "Now open the case." Mm-hmm. And so when he opens the case, you'll see the dot matrix picture of you.
Not an actual case.
No. Oh, it isn't? I was hoping it was a case that had chalices and other stuff attached to it. Because it always just seems, I don't know. Okay, so that happens. So that's, so this case gets opened, and so they can begin to call that person what they would call servant of God at that point. Not a saint, but they were a servant of God. So step 3 is not cut a hole in the box. But... it's a different reference. Sorry, I went there. Step 3 is...
You're hurting your resume. Come on, man.
Okay. Well, I mean, never mind. I'm not going to go back to the other Catholic stuff with that. But step 3, so they have to show proof of a life of heroic virtue. Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, we're looking for what we would call people to be... Have they lived a life of heroic virtue? And I'm not. They don't explain this a whole lot, but they would have to be like signs of the candidate's holiness, like their work, signs like the people have been drawn to prayer through their example. So did their example hopefully create more holiness in other people too?
Yeah.
Did that example lead others to become more virtuous and holy? And so if they are seen to have a life of heroic virtue, they take a step up from being a servant of God now to being venerable.
Venerable.
Not
I like that
not
word.
vulnerable, venerable.
There's a restaurant in Carborough called Venerable,
Oh,
which is really close to Venerable, but it's not quite virtuous enough.
it isn't quite virtuous enough. But
I've heard it's really good, though.
what do they serve? You can't. You can't.
Apparently, they have amazing
brunch.
brunch.
Okay, so it's.
I'm sorry, that probably wasn't interesting enough for you.
Whatever brunch. Well, I know what. How do you define brunch food? How does
Brunch. Well, apparently they have these little beef medallions with like a garlic mashed potato. I've just heard it's like an amazing brunch at Venerable.
Okay, so get your brunch on if you're in Carborough.
That was it. Yeah,
I'm not saying that was.
I don't work for Venerable.
No,
it's
and
very
neither
close
of
to
us have
Venerable.
ever eaten there, and we just like the name.
I've just heard. Yeah.
So
I did I tried to investigate their holiness, and I didn't do it firsthand, but I got witnesses.
got you. One thing I did try this
sorry.
last weekend, if we're talking about brunch food, I actually went to Rise Donuts, and there's a lot of holiness in their donuts.
Do they actually have holes in them?
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
Let's see. Yeah, some of them do. Actually, but I think all the ones I ate were not holy because they were filled donuts.
But I think I would canonize Mo Nuts before I would canonize Rise.
I've not been to Monuts.
I think Mo Nuts is a little bit further in the canonization process.
Okay.
If I'm Pope.
Okay. Well, because again, remember we had servant of God, next step, venerable. And so then, which sometimes people just cap out there at venerable.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of, it's kind of like those players that you get on like the Hall of Fame ballots year after year.
Yeah.
That like, it's really kind of sad. Like, and I know like after a certain number of years, they actually pull you off the ballot, but it's kind of one of those things like you didn't either hit a peak, and then what happens is you go up the next year and less people vote for you, and it just gets worse and worse and sadder and sadder and sadder.
I would be excited to be venerable, though. That would be a pretty good accomplishment.
Okay, so now we're in this whole stair step. I don't know. What do you think, Ben? Is this a flat line? Like you're moving from like point A to point B to point, and the whole roadmap of how we become a saint? Or do you feel like it's like stairs, like stairway to heaven, like we're getting closer? But
I don't quite know what you're asking.
Oh, I don't know. I just, so regardless, I don't think anybody knows what I'm asking. Probably not even
It's
me.
a river.
Okay, it's a river. It's just getting down. Okay, so step 4, because we've already talked about if you make it to step 3, you're venerable, which is a good thing to be, right? I think that's like resume worthy, right? If you say that you're venerable on your resume.
Yeah, you could put that under skills, maybe.
I mean, it would.
Or
like,
accomplishments.
I mean, if I was hiring and I saw like I had one guy that was a servant of God and the other one that was venerable, totally venerable every time.
Yeah. Like, wow, we have a heroically virtuous person here.
Yeah,
Hire them.
Absolutely. I mean, that's,
But you'd have to be dead, and they probably don't want you.
That's true.
Working if you're dead.
True. Okay, you got me there.
Then they couldn't work you to death.
That's true. How
You'd
do I get
already
all,
be dead.
Yeah, that's yeah. I don't know how I get all these resumes of people that say they're venerable wanting to be on the show. Weird. Okay, so back to that. Step 4, and here's where we get a little bit, because that's what I'm saying. If it was a stair step, like to becoming a saint, like this is kind of like the really big step, I would say, is you need to have verified miracles. So this next step, not venerable, is actually known as beatification.
Beatification. Beautification is what happens
I can't
when
read
you
today.
get your makeup done.
Okay, so I think that just blew my chances for getting to beatification because I can't put it out.
We can call it beautification.
No. Beautificate. You're right about that. Because I had someone explain to me today because they were talking about getting their hair blown out, and I was like, yeah, I get that done. And then they're like, really? And I was like, no, I have no idea what that means. So just for those of you to know, which would be a step of beautification, totally different, like
getting your tips frosted would be beautification.
True, but supposedly getting your hair blown out is, I think you just go and they kind of blow dry and brush your hair.
And put some hairspray on?
I don't know. I didn't ask that kind of a question.
We're not really experts on beautification.
No. So, okay. So, this next step. So, what you need to have is to reach this stage, a miracle needs to be attributed to prayers made to the individual after their death. See, this is something I didn't always know. I always thought it was like all the miracles they did while they were alive.
Mm-hmm.
But a miracle needs to be attributed to prayers made to the individual after death. So this one may be hard for me,
Because you're not dead.
I'm not dead yet. And it's going to be hard for me to like go ahead and like solidify. Like I make and put a few things like in motion. But that's, I mean, I don't know. I'm not that much of a chess player because you said 5 years, right? 5 years after I'm dead. So I'd really have to like, for me to pull off this whole charlatan thing, I'd have to really have a very intricate plan.
You would just implant like a statue of yourself in an area with little holes in the eyes so it would cry. But you'd have to make sure no one would see it until after you're dead.
That's true.
And then the crying statue comes to life.
Okay, I like that. That's good. Are you going to use that or can I?
You can have that one.
Okay.
I can actually maybe do it if I'm around for 5 years.
Oh, okay. So how about this? On this step, whoever dies first has got to help a brother out.
So on House of Cards,
is this a pact that we've just making here on the radio?
On House of Cards, Frank Underwood's guy Doug, right? Isn't that his name?
Yep.
I can be your dog.
Okay. Or no,
just behind the scenes.
But it depends on who dies first. Like I could be your dog.
That's true. We need to get on it because life's short.
Do we need to shake on this, or does there need to be like a blood oath?
Sarcasm.
I'm just gonna like throw that in there. We've been laying the
I'm a little
thick.
offended now, Ben, because I was actually being absolutely serious about us starting. Okay, never mind.
We'll talk about that. I don't like making binding contracts on radio.
On the radio. Okay.
Yeah.
So we will do this later over probably many drinks, because that will just solidify it. Okay, so yes, a miracle needs to be attributed to the prayers of an individual after their death, and so that would be proof. So they're saying here, so the prayers being granted are seen as proof that the individual is already in heaven and hence able to intercede with God on the other's behalf. So wait. I'm just going to play, and I'm not meaning this to be punny, but it's a pun. Not to be devil's advocate here, but if you've made it all the way, like, you're venerable and people are praying to you and nothing's happened, is the assumption that you're in hell?
I think the word intercede is important there because I think it's maybe more of the role you play. I know.
Oh, I got you. So
in kind of Catholic theology,
you're like one of God's favorite peeps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Catholic theology, there's as I understand it, again, disclaimer, I'm not a Catholic theologian, but I understand there to be kind of a period of time where you are being purified and there's, in order to kind of reach more closer proximity to God on the other side, that there's this process of purification that has to, you have to go through. And so I don't think, I wouldn't call it people being better or worse, even though it does kind of sound like that. But I would say that you're just not, certain people are not capable of intercession.
Gotcha.
Yet, because they're still maybe working out, or they are being worked on through some of those things that they didn't work on when they should have.
Or they're busy, like, I don't know, with whatever, like, the PS4 is. Like in heaven, you know what I mean? They're like, I'll intercession later. I'll do it later. Let's do intercession. God, no. Rain check, God. No, okay, so if you clear that, then the candidate will be given the title of being blessed. So we've gotten to this point, but they do make a good note here that there's one exception to the miracle requirement, a martyr. So someone who died for their faith can be, what is the word again?
Beatified.
Beatified. Without a verified miracle. So you can be beatified if you're also a martyr, which would actually fit into the whole first requirement of being dead.
Right.
I mean, those
cover both of those.
Yep.
Two birds with
hand
one
in
stone.
hand there. Okay. Yeah. So if everyone else is taking their list and trying to make their plans here, so we get to step 5, which is canonization. So it's the final step in declaring a deceased person to be a saint.
Which is not stuffing someone into a cannon like they do at the circus.
That would be Gosh, can't you do both? Come on. You know what I mean? Can't you be canonized and they like shoot your body out of it?
Well, you could die in that process, and maybe that would help you on your way.
Bonus points. I feel like that
Sarcasm.
you just found a loophole there, my friend. Because if I got stuck at being blessed, they can just shoot me out, and I'm like, hey, he's canonized. That works. Okay.
I feel like we should just have the sarcasm button on repeat on this episode.
That's true. That is very true. I don't know what's happened to us today. So canonization, final step in declaring a deceased person to be a saint. To reach this stage, a second miracle normally needs to be attributed to prayers made to the candidate after they have been beatified. So we need a second miracle. So Ben, the crying tree thing, I mean, we also have to have something like, I don't know, like, because they find like Mary everywhere, right? Like in Cheetos or on bread or all that kind of stuff. Is that miracle worthy? Like if I show up on
I'll paint,
a loaf?
okay, let me get intricate here. I will take some sort of mold that will only show up 5 years after your death and wipe it on a wall in the shape of your face.
Okay.
In some public building.
See, you can paint. Like, I can like paint your house, but I mean, I don't think I have those kind of skills. So you may be a little wary of starting like a saint pack with me. So just being honest, just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I'll do my best.
Okay. So, but canonization, the one thing here's another stipulation. If the person's a martyr, right? It says martyrs, however, only need one verified miracle to become a saint. So if you're not a martyr, 2 miracles. If you are a martyr, 1. I mean, I feel like that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, you were martyred and all.
Being martyred is not fun.
And so yes.
I would imagine. I haven't been martyred, but
last week I almost was martyred. Not really. No. So walking through this, and again, I know that the heart of what we're doing is really just entertainment for you this week because we had figured that we had gotten way too sincere and deep into theology and other stuff there with that. So to push this even further, so we are not knocking the Catholic process of the church. I never knew what it would take, and so I think that's part of our own cultural understanding, and something I brought up to you earlier, Ben, that was not on the air. It was during one of our untimely breaks that we've had in recording the show, is that if you could have a list of your 80s action hero saints, which I know is part of your wheelhouse because you were married to one of the biggest 80s action movies, fictionado. I don't know. She's not even a fan. She goes beyond that. Kelly.
Yes.
How would you even like... I don't even know, like expert.
In Catholic terms? She would be
in Catholic terms.
She would be a cardinal at least.
Okay.
Yeah, she would have to be way up there, like in waiting line for Pope.
Okay. So
80s action movies.
In 80s action movies.
I mean, she goes so far. It's not just 1 or 2. I mean, it's all of them.
Okay.
She really embraces the full scope of 80s action movies.
So if we were to canonize in our own realm of pop culture, if we were to canonize an 80s action star, what were things that we should lay out, before them? Because I know like we started off with step 1 is you had to be dead. And should it be like body count?
Okay. So
if
for this one,
stars.
I would say it's almost the opposite. It would have to, maybe body count, it would have to be that they can't die. Like Arnold never dies in a movie, right? I mean, there are some, I guess, stars that might die in some of their, like maybe Clint Eastwood. Has he died in one of his movies?
I'm sure.
I think he played death in a movie. But so maybe they can't die in their movie.
Okay. Gosh, I fully figure we're going to get schooled in this once your wife listens to this show.
I know.
Okay, so instead of us saying that they can't die in it, because there may be some where they have, with a lot of like the people. Like, okay, so let's first of all, I've actually got pen and paper here, so we'll work backwards. So who would be in the canon of 80s action movie stars?
Well, you've got to have Arnold. You've got to have Bruce Willis. You've got to have Stallone. Jean-Claude Van Damme. That's getting into the 90s too, but I think he kind of spans both 80s and 90s.
Sure, yeah. Who else are we needing?
I don't know, help me out here. Danny Glover?
Nah, I mean...
No, is he not? He might be venerable.
He is. I would say he's venerable.
But not beatified.
Yeah. I mean, he was more like sidekick material-ish.
I don't know. He had a
Lethal
couple
Weapon?
in the 90s.
And
Predator and...
Oh, that's true. He was in Predator.
Predator 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Lethal Weapons.
And then, and see, this is where I'm going to get a little messed up because like Wesley Snipes, but he's more 90s than 80s.
That's true.
Steven Seagal, he's maybe a little more 90s than 80s.
But we're talking about canonization. We're not talking about Venerable or even, you know what I'm saying? Like I feel like there's a tier that you have to have crossed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could well, okay, this may get me completely thrown out of ever being a saint, but what about Chuck Norris?
Yeah, I think you got to put Chuck Norris in there. He's kind of he gets talked about a lot. Let me put it that way.
Okay. So actually, his miracles have really been post-death. Well, he's not dead yet. He's not dead yet. His career,
the death of his career.
The death of his career. So yes,
and then it was resurrected.
It was resurrected.
Chuck Norris jokes
as Chuck Norris jokes and memes. So yeah. Okay, so that one. Okay, so you have. I think overall it's mainly like body count and what ways. Like creative ways of killing people.
Yeah, instead of verified miracles, I think we should have sequels.
Okay.
Like how many sequels you've put out for your movies? Because I mean, a seminal 80s action movie has to have at least like 3 sequels.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, the more the better. I mean, not for people that were watching it.
Yeah.
But for us to canonize them as an 80s action star, it would need to be Because can you think of, and you'll prove me wrong here, but can you think of movies that actually, like, once they passed at least 3, that they got better at all?
Land Before Time.
I'm talking action here, my friend.
Sarcasm.
Well, I mean, there is some
I
action.
wanted to hit that one.
I think I've only seen
I just know there are probably like 20 of those movies.
Yeah, actually, that's no exaggeration. I think we're Wikipedia could tell us that later.
Yeah.
No, but
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Is that kind of an action-y movie?
It's an action-y, but I mean, I wouldn't put Michael J. Fox on the list.
No, he's not an action star. Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford. See, Harrison Ford is really riding the line because
that's very true. Because he's got the Clancy books that he did as well too. I mean, those are kind of action,
right? But he's just kind of he is and he isn't an action star. He doesn't. Maybe there's not quite as much like physical stuff to him.
That's true.
You know,
and actually, he's
just rugged.
I would have to say stuff like the Crystal Skull should take him off the list.
That's true. If you are even in the vicinity of a movie with Shia LaBeouf, you're not allowed to be in his action star. Yeah.
I don't know if that's actually one of the steps, but I think that's just common sense.
What about like Dolph Lundgren?
It's true. I mean, okay. So how about this as one? Does the person have to have at least showed up in an Expendables movie?
Is that sort of is that the book of like canon for 80s action?
Well, it's kind of saying like,
Mel Gibson counts.
Yeah, he was bad guy in one of them.
Yeah.
Has Jean-Claude been in them?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
He was in the second one, I think.
They all blur together to me.
Yeah, but then Terry Crews is kind of a newer guy. So
but he doesn't have the others, and so he's just, he's not there. But we like Terry Crews. But this is just one of the many things you had to have done. And since Terry Crews does not own a time machine, he can't go back and recreate himself in the 80s, because that was the heyday of action movies. Mm-hmm. That was when they were the most ridiculous, and I think at their peak.
Yeah.
Okay,
mullets and all.
So verified sequels. Now you're mentioning mullets. Do we need to have had a mullet to be considered in this too?
Well, let's see. Chuck Norris and Mel Gibson. I don't think Bruce Willis ever really rocked the mullet that much.
He did in a few movies, but not in his action one. I think that movie like Bandits, when he was in there with Billy Bob Thornton, I seem to remember he did. He kind of had. I mean, I think he had an entire wig on.
And Arnold, I guess, has and hasn't. He's had one of those little like mini mullets, like almost mullets.
Okay.
Here's a good one. What about like someone like Hulk Hogan or Jesse Ventura, who makes, because that happens a lot when you're a wrestling figure and you sort of make your way into an action movie, like The Rock or someone like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they should count.
No, I mean, nobody thinks of Hulk Hogan and says movies.
Yeah. I was just thinking of a skullet since we were talking about mullets.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
got, like the classic skullet.
Okay, so we're up to this. So first one is either death count or creative deaths that may accompany a pun.
Yeah.
You know
one-liners.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so death count plus one-liners. Because you can have movies where there's a lot of killing in it, but it's just not as fun. So verified sequels.
Yeah.
So at least 3 in one series that they've had. We have, they need to have shown up in an Expendables movie.
Okay.
Are we doing that one?
Yeah. I mean, that's limiting the field a lot, but I guess that's the point.
Hey.
They're only going to be so many.
Not everyone's a saint.
Like Charles Bronson hasn't been in one. And I guess he's kind of an action.
Yeah, it's true. But, we could do this, like with, if you're martyred, you only have to have one.
Or Steve McQueen. But Steve McQueen's dead.
Yeah.
So
he wasn't an 80s star. So do we need to say just action movie stars? Because, again, you're right. Is 80s limiting us too much?
That's true. Okay, I'll try to rein it in. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Some of my wife's love of action movies are spilling into me now.
Oh, yeah, because I was going to even say action. If you're going action, too, this one would be like a bit of a dark horse, Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Evil Dead.
Got his start in more like horror.
But those are. I mean, they're absurdly
some
horror.
action.
Yeah.
I mean, he's wielding a chainsaw arm. I mean,
how do you go wrong with that?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he's had a mullet. Mm-hmm. But he's not been in an Expendables movie that I'm aware of.
Yeah, that's true. You have to be covered in sweat and some sort of like oil-ish type thing.
Oh, so is oil
for 80s action.
So at some point they need to have been oiled up.
Who played He-Man in the live action? Was that Dolph Lundgren?
That was Dolph Lundgren, yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Which is funny that we started off talking about Catholicism and about how we were like, dipping our feet in areas where we really didn't know what we were talking about. Mm-hmm. And now we don't preface what we're saying. We kind of just go with it in this area. So
I still don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm not sure what that says about us, but we'll just keep going. Okay, so we have death counts plus one-liners. We have verified sequels. They need to have at least 3 of those. They need to have been an Expendables movie, which we can make exceptions, much like the Catholics do for if you're martyred. You need a mullet at some point. You need to have been, which we could say, kind of anointed in oil. Could you say that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the other one I was thinking of, but I don't think he's been in enough sequels, would be Kurt Russell.
Yeah, I would put Kurt Russell as...
But I don't think he has the sequel thing.
And this is a very good, maybe like gray area line person. Patrick Swayze.
You do have Roadhouse.
Because of Roadhouse.
Uh-huh.
But
no sequels.
And the mullet and the sweat.
And sweat and oil. Yep.
But then he's been in so many like.
But he was in Dirty Dancing.
Yeah.
Which that's not a knock on him completely. But
or
that
Ghost.
Was.
Which just like really hurts your action movie credibility.
Yeah. That's true. That does. Well, I mean, Arnold's been in some comedies.
Yeah, but it's still Arnold. I mean, and he still does action-ish things in like Kindergarten Cop.
That's true.
I haven't seen Junior, so I don't know about that one. Jingle All the Way, he does some like action-y type things.
Which I do not recommend that.
Okay.
Because
doing action-y things or Jingle All the Way?
Just any movie with Sinbad.
Oh, poor Sinbad.
I know. That's not a knock on him necessarily. I mean, I don't know. It was a knock on him. I apologize. Okay. Okay. So what else? We already have 5.
Yeah, that's a lot.
But it feels like a little anti. Oh, okay. So then they have to be anointed in oil. Okay, so we have this. We have so far on our list we have Arnold, Willis, Stallone, Van Damme, and Norris. Because I think Norris did like a bunch of Delta Force movies. That would classify.
Oh yeah.
And even if you're wanting to say Seagal, but I'm a little hesitant on Seagal.
Why?
Well,
I mean, I'm not a huge Seagal fan, but
because what I'm saying is usually I think also to embody like the sainthood of 80s like action kind of films, you need to kind of have a sense of humor in the midst of it.
Oh, that's true. And he takes himself way too seriously.
He's pretty humorless. Like I really don't see him throwing out one-liners and being and laughing.
Yeah, that's true.
So I mean, which would be like humility, right? Kind of being able to laugh at yourself somewhat.
That's true.
Okay.
No Mel Gibson. You want to leave him off?
See, that's a hard thing. I mean, yes, Lethal Weapon would be. The first 2 would be up there, and like classics. You'd have Braveheart, which is a classic. It's not 80s, but it's a continuation. He got his start there. Yeah. Oh gosh, you're right. Mad Max.
Yeah, Mad Max is what I was thinking.
It's very, very true. And
Payback isn't quite. I mean, it's a little bit of action.
Yeah, that's true.
A little bit of like noir.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, no, I think he's got. Let's see death count or one-liners. There's lots of one-liners in the Lethal Weapons. Verified sequels, check. Expendables movies, check. Mullet, check. Oil?
He's pretty
Anointed?
sweaty in Lethal Weapon.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we may have to overlook some of his like indiscretions of like the past few years
That's true.
within that because
I don't know if 80s action stars are known for living virtuous lives.
Okay, so again in this one, we'll just leave their lives out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Or maybe that's actually part of who they are. You know, Arnold fathering a child from like the maid.
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
is
I forgot about
do we
that
do we have to add all those into it? I don't know. Okay, no, we'll stay nice. We'll stay nice within this. Okay, so yeah, so if any of you listeners out there are wanting to add people to the canon of the 80s action star Sainthood, we are willing, since we are kind of both archbishops of the show, or can we be co-popes?
Co-pope?
Co-pope.
I don't think I want that kind of responsibility.
You know, to be a co-pope. Okay, we'll just be archbishops or I don't know. I don't really know what this is. Yeah, arch something or other. I think it needs to have the word.
Archdiocese.
Yes.
We will be a district.
Yeah, we'll be our own district. Okay, so yeah, so feel free to contact us over the website, over Facebook and everything else, because we are still taking applications for Action Hero Sainthood. And we are willing to be able to hear your cases. We will investigate them as well, too. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything prayer-wise involved in the whole canonizing of them.
Of 80s action stars?
Yeah. There's no prayers involved. I just think there needs to be some sort of a damsel in distress at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kind of like a prayer, right?
That's true.
Okay. Well, as we begin to get to the end of, I don't know, is there anything else? I was going into my like landing the plane mode. Do you have any final thoughts on this entire bit of insanity that we've kind of been projecting here across the show?
Just that, kind of reiterating from the start, I think it's an interesting process, and I always feel like even if you're not going to agree with something, it's helpful to try to think through how like a group or an individual is approaching something. So thinking through this process of canonization, I think there are a lot of kind of rational points to it, and I just think it's an interesting thing to at least entertain something before dismissing it. So,
are you referring to our version or the Catholic version?
Oh, I was referring to the Catholic version.
Oh, okay.
You're completely allowed to dismiss.
No. I was saying quite the opposite, because I mean I think ours is we've
should be charitable with us.
We have gone beyond being venerable in this process, and I think that if
we put a lot of work into it.
Oh, it was
like what, 15 minutes.
It was
that's
it was 15
of
minutes of us doing this on the fly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is. I think it's the birth of something new, Ben. I think that we just need to write this down, and this will actually go in the annals. Or annals, depending upon which direction you want to put this in for us. But the annals of our whole packet that we're going to submit about becoming saints in the Catholic Church. So I really do. I think this has helped our chances. Because they didn't write this in here, but I don't think any of these saints actually researched on how to make saints.
That's true.
That's innovation right there.
That's a very Protestant way of doing it. Let's make our own way of making saints.
Well, we just did. We started our own way. Oh, you mean like real saints or just our 80s action saints?
It's just very Protestant of us.
Actually, what I really think about this whole thing is it doesn't even have to be action movies, but I do think like if you want to just make a normal person a saint, you ask about their dead count and one-liners. You ask about sequels, and have you been in an Expendable movie? No, sorry. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Do you have a verified mullet? Nope. Do you have any proof that you've been covered in oil at some point or worked out really hard so that you look sweaty and oily? Nope. Sorry. So, I mean, this is an exclusive group that we're starting here, but it's not meant for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'll work on my mullet.
Okay. Yeah, I've grown my hair out. Well, I just got to make sure that I've got more of a party in the front. No, it's a business in the front, party in the back.
Yeah.
Right? So, I think I've just got to party everywhere right now.
The old Billy Ray.
Oh, that is good. That's so good. So, to end on anything by Billy Ray. So, I think that's a good stopping point. Good last words, Ben. Thank you. Billy Ray. And so as we get to the end of this broadcast, just a reminder, you can catch us on podcasts, all of our old shows, www.snarkyfaith.com. You can also find us on Twitter and on Facebook, and we love to interact with you guys. So if you have people you want to submit to Sainthood, we will give it due cause, and we will look through this tirelessly to make sure your person should or should not be an 80s action star saint. But that's all we've got this week, and we will catch you again next week with some more snark. We are out of here.
WCOM is listener-supported community radio, and Snarky Faith is only possible through our sponsors. Aqueduct Conference Centre was established in 1978 as a peaceful destination for small group meetings, special events, conferences, retreats, and weddings. For more information, go to www.aqueductcc.com. We are also sponsored by Lumen. Lumen, a spiritual community of seekers, sojourners, question askers, doubters, and skeptics, is a collective of fellow travelers that embrace the truth that all life is sacred, hope is real, and tomorrow can be better than today. All are welcome. You can find more information at www.lumencommunities.com.